The Empress Dowager has passed away, and all officials in the court must select a daughter to accompany her in burial. I lost the draw to my elder sister, and was supposed to be buried forever in the imperial mausoleum, but on the day of the burial, the emperor fell in love with me at first sight and immediately made me his consort. My elder sister's husband, however, died early in battle, unable to bear the loneliness of the empty chambers. She had an affair with a guard, and by law, she should be drowned in the river. I went to the execution ground to plead for her, only to be dragged down with her instead. When I opened my eyes again, my legitimate sister knelt upright, swearing solemnly, "I am willing to be buried alive with the Empress Dowager." When my elder sister tore up the fortune slip and knelt on the ground, I knew then she had been reborn too. "Sister, what did you say?" My stepmother stood up in disbelief, slamming the table, but my elder sister remained unmoved, her words even more bold. "As the eldest daughter of the family, I should set an example. How could I let my younger sister go?" Even the imperial eunuch delivering the decree was moved by her words. What noble aspirations, young lady! While the daughters of other officials were weeping and wailing, only the daughter of Lord Lin shows such a profound sense of righteousness. Upon hearing this, my father, who had been silent by my side, suddenly brightened up. "Then I must trouble you, sir, to put in a good word for me before His Majesty." After saying this, he stepped forward and kicked my birth mother, who was still holding my elder sister and weeping bitterly. "What are you crying for? It is a blessing from her past life that Jinnah can accompany the Empress Dowager in death today. Hurry up and dress her up. Don't keep the gentleman waiting." My elder sister then actively broke free from my birth mother's embrace and turned her gaze toward me. In those eyes that shimmered with emotion, there was unwillingness, hatred, and delight. I calmly met her gaze and spoke slowly. "Elder sister, why must you go to such lengths?" She took the opportunity to embrace me, her icy voice coiling around my ear like a venomous snake. "Sister, watch closely. In this lifetime, I will become the Empress." After my legitimate elder sister left, the mansion fell back into a deathly silence. These are turbulent times indeed. The border wars are intensifying, compounded by a once-in-a-century drought, leaving the national treasury depleted. The emperor issued an edict to increase taxes and also went door-to-door to conscript able-bodied men for military service and corvée labor, causing the common people to suffer immensely. A few days ago, the Empress Dowager passed away. To demonstrate filial piety, the emperor ordered the grand construction of her mausoleum, resulting in the deaths of thousands. In the dead of night, the Empress Dowager appeared in the emperor's dreams, expressing her regret at never having had a granddaughter-in-law. Startled awake, the emperor immediately issued an edict commanding the ministers to select an unmarried daughter to accompany the Empress Dowager. Those who disobey shall be punished by exterminating their entire clan. Those with some power bribe eunuchs and find a random maid to pass off as the daughter. Those of lesser status marry their daughters to a decent young man from a respectable family. But for minor officials like my father, they can only accept their fate. Tens of thousands of officials in the court, and in the end, 8,000 young maidens were to be buried in the imperial mausoleum. They were all as delicate as the tips of lotus flowers. Hearing the cries from the neighboring estate, I closed my eyes and 2 streams of tears rolled down my cheeks. I was reborn too late. There was nothing I could do to save them now, but I will avenge them in the blink of an eye. It was the day of the Empress Dowager's burial. My stepmother knelt in the courtyard, facing north, and kowtowed until her head was bruised and bloody, nearly fainting. "Jinnah, it's your mother's incompetence. It's your mother who has failed you. Although I do not like her character, I can understand a bit of her grief over losing her child. Both of her sons were conscripted into the army, and now their fate is unknown. Her only daughter is about to be buried alive. Oh, but that may not necessarily be the case." I calculated the time, thinking that my elder sister should have met the emperor by now. In my previous life, when I was granted permission to return home, my elder sister had inquired about how I had escaped certain death. In front of the imperial mausoleum, 8,000 maidens wept with broken hearts. Only I remained unflinching, facing death with composure. The emperor asked, "Why aren't you crying?" I replied, "I was born without a homeland. Peace of mind is my home." He laughed heartily. How could I feel at ease letting such a beauty go with the Empress Dowager? Come, help the lady ye up. At that time, my elder sister listened very intently. I imagine she must have chewed over these few lines of dialogue countless times on those countless difficult nights. Now, she must surely be able to play out this scene well. I casually embroidered, until the eunuch's announcement came from outside the door. The imperial decree arrives. The needle pricked my fingertip, and a drop of blood fell onto the embroidery cloth, spreading into a bright red circle like the sun, illuminating the majestic and magnificent structure of the imperial city in the cloth. Elder sister, if I were to be reborn, it wouldn't just be about becoming an empress. Elder sister has fulfilled her wish and become the noble consort ye. When one attains the Tao, even their fowls and dogs ascend to heaven. Father's official rank rose several levels in one go, and people eager to curry favor with him nearly trampled down the gates of our estate. Among them was my elder sister's husband from her previous life, a fourth-rank senior cavalry commander, Shundu, but his flattery of father wasn't for the sake of promotion, nor was it for the sake of beauty. Instead, the army he commanded had suffered heavy casualties, lacking food and medicine, making it difficult to continue. But the emperor neglected state affairs and never saw his plea for reinforcements. All he heard was that the emperor had found a beloved woman and stayed with her in the palace every day. Desperate, he turned to the woman's family, hoping to forge a connection and have them relay his message. Just like in the previous life, my father couldn't resist the temptation of the pair of golden lions and agreed to my engagement with Shundu. I did not evade my responsibility before the wedding. I secretly met him once, dressed in black, with sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes, full of spirit and vigor. No wonder my proud and arrogant elder sister agreed to marry a fourth-rank military officer. It's a pity he died too young in this life. If he's smart enough, I'll let him live longer. On the day of the wedding, my elder sister sent a gift. The box was made of fine Dowager odorifera wood, wrapped in golden threaded brocade, extremely luxurious. And I have also heard about her extravagance in the palace. For a single bath, nearly 100 towels are used. If she craves lychees, several swift horses must be run to death to ensure they are delivered on the same day. Occasionally, when bored, she even goes to the beacon towers to set off fireworks for amusement. Truly enjoyed all the wealth and luxury. I opened the box. Inside were stacks of thick ghost money and a few incense sticks. At the bottom of the box were carved 4 large characters: prepare for a rainy day. She must have been determined that Shundu would die, so she even prepared funeral items for me. I'm both angry and amused. The elderly maid delivering the gift was still standing before me, so I couldn't lose my temper. I could only reply, "Thank you for Her Highness's generous favor. I have a letter for my family. May I trouble you to deliver it for me?" Since Her Highness entered the palace, she has been thinking of her family constantly. "You are very thoughtful, madam." The elderly maid accepted it with a kindly expression, but shortly after stepping out, she crumpled the letter into a ball and tossed it into a dry well. Standing by the window, I watched her every move, my thoughts swirling in a whirlwind. Just then, Shundu, having finished drinking the wedding wine in the front courtyard, was being helped by a servant as he stumbled drunkenly toward the room. I hurriedly put away the grand gift my elder sister had given me and sat upright on the bed again. After lifting the bridal veil, we drank the nuptial wine amidst the flickering red candles. Shundu sat by my side, yet he did not touch me in the slightest. "Did you present that letter to consort ye?" I nodded. The letter was indeed delivered, but it now lies in the dry well in the courtyard. Shundu's face lit up with joy, and then he pulled out a stack of contracts from his sleeve. The top one was actually a divorce paper. I raised an eyebrow. What does my husband mean by this? He didn't hide anything. I've been fighting on the battlefield for years, rarely coming home, and my life is uncertain. If you find someone you like in the future, or if I die, you can just leave me. After speaking, he flipped back a few pages and found they were all deeds and banknotes. "These are what my father saved for me. They are extraneous to me, so I entrust them to your care." I took them and examined them closely, noticing that the deeds were in the name of the Marquis of Shenping. I have a vague impression of this Marquis. I only remember that he withdrew from the court early and retreated to the mountains and forests. I fear that the Marquis's estate has long been in decline, with little real power left, retaining only the fiefdom in the Baishu region. Even Shundu only managed to secure a fourth-rank military official position in the court, but for me, this is already enough. Seeing that I remained silent for a long time, Shundu took the jade pendant from his waist again. Oh, this was left by my mother. Aside from this, I have nothing else of value. The jade pendant is made of high-quality material, but its appearance is rather peculiar. Unlike ordinary jade ornaments, it more closely resembles a certain type of military token I've seen in ancient books. It seems Shundu is far more interesting than I imagined. I carefully tucked the jade pendant away and smiled sweetly. When will my husband depart? He replied, the military situation is urgent. I will set off tomorrow. I moved closer to him, placing both hands on his shoulders. Could you give me a ride along the way, husband? Shundu died early in his previous life, so naturally, he would not know what happened afterward. I eventually became the Empress, not solely due to my beauty internally. I advised the Emperor to reduce tyranny and cleanse the court externally. I pacified the rebels to submit to the throne and defended the borders. Within 3 years, the once crumbling Liang dynasty was gradually stabilized by me, even showing signs of flourishing. But after all this hard work, a sudden rebirth, and it's all for nothing. This time, I can't be bothered to help. Wouldn't it be delightful to kick it all over? Shundu is an excellent ally. He is stationed in Guangzhou, with the Qinling Mountains to the south, the Long Mountains to the west, the Lurs Plateau to the north, and Mount Hua to the east, all encircled by the Yellow River, making it a strategic location that can attack or retreat as needed. Shu is not far from Guangzhou, separated only by Hanzhong, rich in resources, and can serve as a rear supply base. If these 3 places can be brought under control, we will have the capital to contend with the Liang dynasty. In the carriage, I was studying the map when the curtain was suddenly lifted. Shundu poked his head in, somewhat surprised, and said, "You can read this too." I openly admitted, "I know a little. Why do you ask?" His gaze toward me held a bit more appreciation. "Ahead is a fork in the road. I will send someone to escort you to Shu. We part ways here. Shu is not like the Central Plains. Be extra careful." I nodded, then suddenly remembered Shundu's death in my previous life, and a sense of pity welled up in my heart. Recently, there has been unrest among the Qiong tribe. "Be careful, husband." I took his hand and slipped a talisman into it. After all, we are husband and wife. I'm just doing a favor, but whether he can overcome this trial depends on his own fate. Shundu paused, turned his head away, and his ears turned pink. "All right, thank you, my lady." I stayed in the Shu region for over 3 months. The impact of tyranny and natural disasters here is minimal. Occasionally, soldiers come to conscript able-bodied men, only to be beaten up with large sticks by the people of Shu. But in the long run, this is not a solution. The first thing I did upon arriving at my fief was to inventory the granaries. Although Shu is warm all year round and the land is fertile, the current grain production is far from sufficient to meet the demands of war. I then immediately cleared a small plot of land to study methods for increasing rice production. The Marquis of Xianping was well regarded in Shu, and knowing I was his daughter-in-law, many people offered their assistance. Building on the achievements of my previous life, I quickly increased the yield several-fold. With the food supply secured, I found time to delve into the study of mechanical arts. In my previous life, when the Liang dynasty was at the height of its power, the western regions had once presented firearms as tribute. The emperor scoffed, but I had handled it a few times myself, so I figured it wouldn't be too difficult to replicate. For this, I sought out the best blacksmith in Shu. His name was Li Jiuzhao, a descendant of Li the founder of blacksmithing. He was an upright man with exceptional skills. His only flaw was his eccentric and taciturn nature. Whatever I said to him, he would only reply with an which was a waste of his handsome face. After half a month of such intense study, Li Jiuzhao actually managed to forge a barrel for a gun. Just as he was about to load the gunpowder, several farmers rushed into the shop. Panicked, "Princess consort, the court has sent troops." saying they are here to punish the rebellious peasants of Shu. I entered the open hall, where my elder sister sat regally in the main seat. To her left stood the Emperor's personal eunuch, to her right, the white-clad young man fanning himself with a feather fan was someone I knew from my previous life. I had a good idea of their purpose here, so I obediently knelt on the ground. "Greetings, consort ye." Before the words had even finished, the eunuch slapped me across the face. I was instantly dizzy and disoriented, taking a long time to regain my hearing. "How dare you, insolent commoner, show disrespect to the noble consort? The Emperor's harem is like a breeding ground for venomous creatures, and even I have suffered many losses. For my elder sister to become a noble consort so quickly, she truly is a venomous creature indeed." I had no choice but to endure the pain of my torn lip and greet her once more. "Greetings, noble consort. Between sisters, there's no need for such formality." My elder sister let out a cold laugh and raised her hand slightly. "All right, all of you, leave. Let me have a private chat with my sister." Soon, only the two of us remained in the room. My elder sister stood up, walked around me twice, and touched my coarse cloth dress, finally sneering, "Sister, why put yourself through this?" I remained expressionless. "The journey to Shu is long and treacherous. Your Highness wouldn't have made this trip just to show concern for me." At my words, my elder sister grabbed a handful of my hair. Her grip was incredibly strong, almost tearing my scalp off, yet her voice remained soft and charming. "I've heard that the people of Shu are fierce and disrespectful to government officials. As the imperial consort, it is my duty to help the Emperor resolve troubles and suppress the rebellious. To my surprise, it is my sister who governs Shu." She paused for a moment, then forced an exaggerated smile. "You've also been reborn, haven't you? Since it's already been guessed, there's no need to hide it anymore. If my elder sister has come today truly to take my life, then do not blame me for being ruthless." I felt the soft sword in my sleeve. Reborn once more. My elder sister is still as foolish as ever. But my elder sister was not provoked by me. She crouched in front of me and gently patted my cheek. "Foolish, am I? Although I was confined within that high-walled, solitary residence, I am neither blind nor foolish. I know how my sister ruled the people effectively in her previous life, and I will surely surpass her. But you, knowing this time you cannot defeat me, choose to hide in your fiefdom, living a life of cowardice. Once, in order to win back the hearts of the people and pacify the rebels, I disregarded my status as a concubine and personally went to the war-torn regions to distribute grain and fodder. Though this move was risky, the rewards were substantial. The public's resentment towards the court has diminished by more than half, and my reputation for virtue and kindness has spread far and wide. However, my elder sister only imitated the surface, lacking the true essence. I retorted, "Then tell me, how would you quell the unrest?" She laughed and said, "For lawless rebels like you, immediate execution." I smiled in return, "Your Highness the Imperial Consort. When I departed the palace to suppress the rebellion, I wore through dozens of pairs of shoes and fell ill with a plague, barely clinging to life. Your 8-carried palanquin, extravagant garments and fine feasts, your casual condemnation of one group as rioters and your swift order for the other to be put to immediate death. This bears no resemblance to quelling a rebellion. It looks far more like you have come merely to flaunt your power." My elder sister frowned deeply, but couldn't utter a word. I continued to mock her. "I act for the people, for the country, for the world. You act for yourself, for profit, for wealth and honor. The common people see things clearly in their hearts. Who knows what they say about you behind your back? If you want to be the Empress, why not try being reborn again?" These words struck right at my elder sister's sore spot. She was so angry that her eyes widened, and even her voice changed pitch. "What a joke. Do you know what I heard at the Riverside execution ground that day? I can't be bothered to recall. All I know is that she is now highly emotional, her fair neck just an inch away from me. The soft sword is sharp, capable of delivering a fatal blow, silent and swift." I then climbed out through the back window and headed to Guangzhou to find Shendu, planning to figure things out from there. Just as I was thinking this, a loud crash came from outside the door. "Do not touch the princess consort. My hand froze inside my sleeve. It's really not the right time to come. Li Jiuzhao was bare-chested, wielding a red-hot iron axe, cutting down anyone who stood in his way. My elder sister retreated in panic, not daring to say another word, and I was sheltered in his embrace. The bronze-colored muscle pressed against my cheek, scalding and hard. The frustration of having my plans disrupted also vanished without a trace. My elder sister looked at our movements, and a strange red glow suddenly rose on her face. You, the crown princess consort, how dare you? Your late husband's bones are not yet cold, and you're already having an affair with another man. You're utterly devoid of conscience, she shouted loudly to the outside again. Someone, come and tie up this adulterous couple for me. Before the soldiers outside could arrive, my legitimate sister was the first to receive a slap. Li Jiuzhao had been forging iron for years, and his strength was far greater than that of a eunuch. My legitimate sister lost consciousness on the spot, collapsing to the ground, with blood seeping from her ears, nose, and the corners of her mouth. The officers and soldiers rushed over at the sound, surrounding the small open hall so tightly that not even a drop of water could leak through. They had just been caught off guard by Li Jiuzhao's axe, allowing him to break in, but now, we were outnumbered, and they were all elite troops of the imperial court. It seemed extremely difficult for us to escape. Li Jiuzhao truly remained silent until he made a stunning move. I whispered, "You're hitting the noble consort, Amham." Li Jiuzhao slowly lowered the axe. Just as everyone thought he was about to surrender, he pulled an object from his waist and aimed it directly at my legitimate sister's head. "Nobody move." The young man in white shouted loudly. He was well-traveled and knowledgeable, so he must have recognized that Li Jiuzhao was holding a matchlock gun, not something else. Once fired, the eldest sister's head would be blown to pieces, and theirs would be in danger as well. Taking the opportunity, I spoke up, "Yun Morsheng, if you know what's good for you, take your people and get out of Shudi." The people present were quite astonished. A village woman, actually recognizing the renowned white-clothed prime minister of the current dynasty. Yun Morsheng narrowed his eyes and let out a very soft laugh, continuing to fan himself. "The flintlock requires igniting the fuse. I wonder if the two of you have firewood on hand. If it were someone else today, they would have been intimidated by this novelty, but it just so happened to be the youngest prime minister of Liang, Yun Morsheng." The tide of battle suddenly turned. The soldiers closed in on us step by step, and just as the sword tips were about to touch our throats, the outside erupted in commotion again. The sound of horse hooves, war drums, and battle cries. Even the roof beams inside the house shook. The soldiers turned their swords, all pointing toward the door. Amidst the swirling dust, Shendu rode a red-maned horse, clad in silver armor and wielding a sword. Behind him stood a remarkably grand and fully armed squad of soldiers. In comparison, the thousands of troops surrounding us seemed vulnerable and easily defeated. "Yun Xiang. It's been a while." Shendu dismounted his horse and swiftly walked towards me, unimpeded. Yun Morsheng's face stiffened. "You're not dead," Shendu angrily said. "Who said I was dead?" Yun Morsheng pointed to the person lying on the ground. "The noble consort said so." My legitimate sister could imagine that I had also been reborn, but she never expected that after my rebirth, I would ensure Shendu's survival. Should I say she knows I'm cold-blooded, or should I say she's inflexible? "Who are you? Again, and why are you holding my wife?" Shendu looked at Li Jiuzhao, his gaze sharp as an arrow. I quickly ran into Shendu's embrace. Just now when they were giving me a hard time, it was Zhu Jiao who helped me out. He lowered his gaze, trembling as he touched the dried blood at the corner of my mouth. "Did you do this?" Shendu raised his long sword, pointing it at the eunuch pretending to be dead nearby, his killing intent rising. Yun Morsheng timely reminded him, "General Shen, you are a high-ranking official of the court. Do you intend to rebel with this action?" Shendu burst out laughing. "Rebellion? It's the court that forced me into this. The chaos in Guangzhou, the Qiong uprising. I led 100,000 brothers there, yet only 30,000 returned. Why, when I petitioned for reinforcements, the emperor turned a deaf ear, indulging only in pleasure. I defended Guangzhou for 3 months, yet not a single grain of food from the court arrived. Half of the brothers who died perished from starvation. If it weren't for my wife sending people to bring me food and medicine, more of my brothers would have died. Now, all I see is my wife. There's no such thing as a damned government. Shendu had indeed rebelled. He killed the eunuch, detained the several thousand soldiers, and only allowed Yun Morsheng to return with his elder sister. This was all within my expectations. Without military power, overthrowing the Liang dynasty would be no different from a fool's dream. Although Shendu holds military power, he hails from a marquis family, his ancestors having been protected by the royal family, and he should be utterly loyal to the court. If I were to merely try to persuade him verbally, I would likely be seen as a madwoman and thrown out of the house. Thus, I must make him experience it firsthand. There are rebels ahead and foreign tribes behind, and soldiers in the army are starving to death. No response from heaven, no answer from earth. Yet the reinforcements that were bought with all their wealth from the court have yet to arrive. This is when it's time for me to step in. I casually select a few strong men, send him a few carts of life-saving grain and medicine, and include a heartfelt letter from home. My lord, the people of Shu and I are all awaiting your triumphant return. At this point, any man with even a shred of courage would feel a rebellious stirring in his heart, especially someone as young and spirited as Shendu. He gathered talented individuals along the way, reclaimed the rebel forces, and reorganized them into the Shen family army. As he marched back to Shu in a grand procession, he happened to witness me being humiliated. During this time, not a single step can be misplaced. Inside the inner room, I lay my head on his chest and sincerely praised him. My husband is truly remarkable. His heart was racing, and his chest rose and fell sharply. It's all thanks to my wife. Needless to say, this inexperienced young general is indeed easy to deceive. I chatted with him about some trivial household matters, and then we fell asleep in each other's arms. Only after he fell into a deep sleep did I turn over and head to the outer courtyard. In the scattered moonlight, I said, Yun Morsheng, come out. I met Yun Morsheng when we were young at the Imperial Academy. He was the son of nobility, free to come and go for lessons. My status is humble, and as a woman, I can only eavesdrop from the window. When Yun Morsheng discovered me, he did not make a sound. Who are you? I replied, the daughter of the county magistrate, Lin Miao. He looked me over and asked, what insights do you have regarding what the teacher taught today? I was very honest. There is a mistake. When the people have many sharp weapons, the state becomes more chaotic. When the people have many skills, strange things arise. What mistake is there in that? Those who share joy with others will have their sorrows shared. Those who share peace with others will have their dangers rescued. The people and the state are fundamentally one. The teacher separated the two in his discussion. That is the mistake. After speaking, I blushed and my heart raced. Hastily leaving, I only heard Yun Morsheng say softly behind me, she truly is an interesting person. Later, he took the initiative to send me some books, and we became familiar with each other. Mostly at midnight, under the secluded courtyard wall, we quietly discussed our thoughts on the contents of the books. Only once did he disguise me as a maid and bring me into the mansion. The residence was resplendent with gold and jade, the pavilions filled with countless books, and I couldn't help but exclaim in awe. He teased, if you marry me, all of this will be yours. At that time, I harbored a few expectations. Later on, he displayed extraordinary talent, achieving the top honors in 3 consecutive imperial examinations, while I remained trapped in the palace, rarely seeing the light of day. Our friendship gradually faded. I wonder what brings him here today. I heard from the noble consort that your husband died in battle. I was worried you might not be doing well. Yun Morsheng's long eyelashes trembled slightly, casting a shadow over his porcelain-like face. It seems now that you don't need me. He was about to turn and leave, but I called out to him, I need you now. Yun Morsheng froze, his eyes sparkling. I took out the jade pendant that Shendu gave me the other day from my sleeve. You're well-traveled and knowledgeable. Help me take a look. What is this? Yun Morsheng examined it for a moment, somewhat uncertain. This is indeed a military tally. I've seen it in ancient texts before. It seems to be. He rubbed the cloud patterns on the jade pendant, his voice deepening. It's the Flying Cloud Division. I had indeed heard of the Flying Cloud Division. This was an elite crossbow unit, whose arrows flew like clouds or rainbows, capable of hitting targets with precision from 1,000 miles away. The Feiyun masters are elusive and widely dispersed, making it difficult to gather them. Yun Morsheng noticed my doubts. A single Feiyun arrow can summon the Feiyun masters. The arrowhead is hidden within the tiger talisman. As expected of Yun Morsheng, who could compose poems at the age of 3, his mind is truly sharp. I couldn't help but ask him, "Prime Minister Yun, are you helping me like this because you also want to rebel?" He remained silent for a moment before changing the subject. "Who gave this to you?" I replied. "It was left to Shendu by his mother." Yun Morsheng curled his lips into a cold smile. "A general, yet he can't even recognize a tiger tally." The cool night breeze carried the fragrance of magnolia from around him, spreading through the courtyard. I stared at him intently, smiling but saying nothing. We already walked the same path, bound by years of tacit understanding that needed no words. Finally, he couldn't hold back and lowered his head. "As the Prime Minister, seeing the people in distress, yet still aiding the tyrant, I truly am no good." I acknowledged Yun Morsheng's talent and character, so I gave him a way to step down gracefully. "Then how about serving as my accomplice?" He nodded solemnly. He was set to depart the next day. Escorting his legitimate sister back to the palace, I gave him a copy of the imperial city's structural diagram I had embroidered earlier, intending to point out several key locations for him to prepare in advance. Yun Morsheng gave me a deep look, showing no sign of surprise. As intelligent as he was, he must have sensed that I was no longer the Lin Miao of the past. At that moment, a flash of sword light came from behind. "Yun Morsheng, you're courting death." "I forgot. Shendu is still here." The two of them chased each other around the courtyard, causing a ruckus. "Disturbing my wife in the middle of the night, have you no shame? I've known Miao 10 years longer than you. I know what she likes to eat, what she enjoys playing, and what books she loves to read. Do you?" You may not know these things, but you should at least understand the principle of first come, first served. I am her husband. She personally sewed a talisman for me. Oh, Miao and I exchanged letters, exchanged sachets, and 3 boxes couldn't hold them all. You threw them all away. You're not allowed to keep them." "Absolutely not. Who are you?" Standing to the side. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, it would be hard to believe this was a conversation between a general and a prime minister. Finally, one was tired of chasing, and the other was tired of running. Both sat on the steps, gasping for breath, and I spoke slowly. "Yun Morsheng, you go first. We'll meet in the palace." Shendu stared intently at his retreating figure, his eyes filled with resentment. I quickly reassured her, "Don't worry, he's with me." Shendu changed his expression, looking somewhat pitiful. "What about me? You are my husband." It was just a casual remark. Shendu hadn't even managed to crack a smile when a head popped out from the darkness of the courtyard. "What about me?" "Wait." Li Jujiao, under our astonished gazes, he pulled out a flintlock pistol and handed it to me. "Madam, now it can fire without needing to be lit." It turns out Li Jujiao had been studying this firearm on his own all this time. Touched, I carefully stored the finely crafted firearm away and casually praised him. "Good, you are also one of my people." Under the moonlight, a blush spread across Li Jujiao's wheat-colored face. "Amham, oh, you big-headed ghost." Shendu finally broke down. "We rested in the Shu region. The wounded received timely treatment, while those staying in the Shu region took care of logistics and supplies. Most of the captured imperial troops surrendered. They were still young, at an age when they should have been cherished by their parents, but instead were conscripted into the army, so they naturally harbored hatred towards the Liang dynasty. Only a few chose death over submission and bit their tongues to commit suicide. The people of Shu remembered the kindness of Marquis Xianping, and many young men volunteered to join the army. Li Jiuzhao is also coming with us. He is skilled with a sword and knows how to make fire guns. A rare talent indeed. This makes the scale of the Shen family army unprecedentedly large. We split into 3 routes, capturing the regions of Guangzhou, Shaanxi, and Hubei. To say it was captured, but in truth, it didn't take much effort. The world had long suffered under the tyranny of the Liang dynasty. From officials down to the common people, everyone had a close relative who had been harmed by the imperial court. Upon hearing our intentions, They opened the city gates wide and handed over the precious seal. It's the rebel leaders who are difficult to deal with. We have troops, provisions, and firearms, yet even with such a significant disparity in strength, they still resist. Stubbornly, after all, they all aspire to seize the throne, so their ambitions are naturally not small. I fought several tough battles and promised them official positions and titles after my coronation before I could barely bring them under control. About a year passed in this manner before we finally reached the gates of the capital. The city gates, shrouded in thin mist, stood majestically and were heavily guarded. I rode at the head of the column, gazing up at this initial foe, and also the final one. Who goes there? The commander of the national defense stood on the city wall. Around him were 10 cannons, and archers lined up in a row, all aiming at my head. Your future master. My voice echoed in the wind, lingering for a long time without fading. The general had not expected the leader of the Shen family army to be a woman, and the tension on his face eased considerably. Miss, swords and arrows have no eyes. You should call your husband over, Shendu shouted loudly. I am. The general took a clear look at his appearance and furrowed his brow tightly. Aren't you the son of the Marquis of Xianping? Not only do you defy the court, but you also submit to a woman. The Marquis of Xianping had a stellar reputation. How could he have sired such a wretch like you? Shendu initially refused as well, firmly believing that men were better at warfare, but the battles I commanded were as if guided by divine intervention, winning one after another over time. His initial defiance turned into admiration, and he willingly followed my orders. If the general does not trust me, why not compete with me? I raised the bow and arrow in my hand. If I can hit the target on the city wall with this arrow, will the general open the gates and let us in? Upon hearing this, the general sneered and said, there are no targets on the city wall. Stop pushing yourself too hard. I asked, is the great general even afraid of a woman? His gaze instantly turned cold. If you lose, I will have you pierced by 10,000 arrows until you die. Shendu pulled me anxiously. Wife, there really are no targets on the city wall. I gently pushed away his hand, narked an arrow, and drew the string. The wind speed was just right. The arrow pierced through the clouds. The general looked up at the sky, laughing wildly. I thought you were some kind of heroine, but you don't even know where to aim. He raised his palm and shouted, fire the arrows. Tens of thousands of arrows flew toward me, cutting through the wind. Shendu wanted to ride his horse to block in front of me, but it was already too late. Just as the sharp arrowhead was an inch away from me, it suddenly split into 2 halves. Immediately after, the arrows in the air also shattered and fell to the ground, emitting crisp sounds one after another. Just as everyone was puzzled, countless emerald green arrows flew in from all directions, skillfully bypassing the Shen family army and heading straight for the soldiers guarding the city walls. In an instant, an arrow struck the neck of every soldier, right at the 3-inch mark, killing them instantly. Only the general was hit in the heart. I wiped the bow, speaking in a low voice. You are the best target. He looked down in disbelief. Flying Cloud Master. This time, it was my turn to raise my hand. Kill them. After entering the city, the scene along the streets was unbearable to behold. Countless corpses were piled up in the corners. The survivors, barely clothed, huddled under the bridge. Only when the palace's slop cart came out did they rush out to fight over the scraps. I was furious, but Shendu was even angrier, gripping my hand tightly. What just happened? Upon closer inspection, his eyes were red at the corners. I can't stand to see a man cry, so I patiently explained to him everything about the jade pendant and Master Feiyun. His voice trembled. How could I not know? That's your mother's item. As a general, how could you not recognize the tiger tally? I couldn't help but add another sentence, seeing his frustrated expression. It wasn't me, it was Yun Morsheng who said that. Alright, now he's completely in tears. A handsome man weeping is indeed a sight to behold. But there's still one final hurdle to overcome. That was to capture the imperial palace and kill the emperor. When the army reached the palace gates, there were no guards in sight, but what met their eyes shocked everyone. On the palace gates, a row of women stood, completely naked. The soldiers, embarrassed, covered their eyes and dared not move forward. People often believe that women are the ultimate embodiment of yin, While men are the ultimate embodiment of yang, the absurd idea that having women remove their pants could use yin to overcome yang and defeat an army of over 100,000 soldiers is something only the emperor would dare to implement. Shendu closed his eyes tightly and leaned close to my ear. "My lady, shall we shoot them all?" I sighed. "Female generals, step forward." A group of people quickly emerged from the middle of the formation. I led them up to the palace gates, untying the ropes from each woman and distributing clothing. And these women's faces were all quite familiar. Apart from the palace maids and matrons, even the concubines of the harem were standing here with their pants removed. Once again, I was disgusted to the point of dizziness by the emperor's cowardice, but I didn't clearly see that the person before me was my legitimate elder sister. The moment I was untied, she grabbed my neck and dragged me to the edge of the palace wall. "Nobody come closer," she screamed hysterically. I glanced back at the 50-foot-high palace wall and softened my voice. "Why don't you put on some pants first?" "Shut up," my elder sister, once the epitome of noble grace, spat in my face. "Today, I will drag you down with me. This is not how fate should be. This is not how fate should be." I suddenly burst into laughter, her amber eyes fixed on me with a deathly stare. "What are you laughing at?" I laughed even louder. "So you heard that too? What do you mean?" My elder sister, the legitimate daughter, trembled in terror, and I took the opportunity to lean in close to her ear. "Do you really think someone destined to be an empress could be so easily drowned by you?" That day at the riverside execution ground, as I stubbornly walked toward my elder sister despite the emperor's attempts to stop me, these words echoed in my ears. "Fate should not be like this." I do not know whose voice that was, but quelling internal strife, securing the borders, and rebuilding the dynasty, each and every one of these tasks was accomplished by me. Why should the emperor be the one to receive the worship of thousands and enjoy endless wealth and honor? And why should the emperor be the one to be recorded in history and remembered for eternity? Yes, fate should not be like this. Fate should not be like this. That position should have been mine. I let my legitimate sister grab my skirt and drag me into the water. The instinct for survival made her step on me to rise to the surface, yet I tightly held onto her ankle, sinking with her into the dark, boundless river. When I opened my eyes again, we had indeed both been reborn. "So this life, you will never see how destiny unfolds, sister." The hidden sword finally leaves its sheath. A swift throat-slitting strike. My elder sister falls from the city wall, struggles for a few moments, then falls still. Entering the palace, the royal family and nobles were hosting a banquet in the imperial garden. Cups clinked, music and songs filled the air, creating a lively atmosphere. Dozens of exquisite dishes were presented, only to be taken away after a few bites. Wine flowed like water into the river. No wonder even the slop trucks attract a mad scramble from the people. I threw a knife, which struck an official squarely, splattering blood everywhere. The scene immediately descended into chaos. My father was among them, and he recognized me at a glance. "Meower. What are you going to do?" I stood with my hands behind my back, speaking solemnly. To clear the court of treacherous ministers, my father finally caught on and cursed angrily. "You unfaithful, unfilial, unkind, and unjust daughter. You should have left the Lin residence with your prostitute mother back then." After my legitimate elder sister entered the palace, my father's career flourished smoothly, and he now holds the position of Grand Tutor, but he has forgotten that his first official post was bought with my mother's body. I smiled gently and said, "I do not wish to bear the crime of patricide. Please, father, end your own life and spare me the difficulty." Just as he drove my mother out of the mansion in the bitter cold of winter, right after she had given birth, and even glorified it as, "A clean official cannot have any stains, don't make things difficult for me." Father stared at the dagger in front of him, his veins bulging with anger. "The emperor will have you, this disobedient daughter, torn apart by 5 horses and dismembered." "The emperor?" I spread out my hands and looked around. "The princes and nobles have been slaughtered, and those who should be killed have been killed. Where is the emperor now?" But calculating the time, Yun Morsheng should have already captured the emperor by now. Indeed, fireworks lit up the sky above the Hall of Supreme Harmony. I called Shun Du and Li Jiuzhao, along with a few trusted soldiers, and hurried toward the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Given the Emperor's temperament, it was inevitable that he would try to flee. In my previous life, he had been deeply devoted to me and had revealed all the secret passages in the palace. Fearing that I might one day face danger now, I had Yun Morsheng set up checkpoints in advance at each of these secret passages, and sure enough, we caught him. The Emperor, already despondent to the extreme, became excited upon seeing me. I have heard from the noble consort, we were husband and wife in our previous life, weren't we? I raised an eyebrow upon hearing this. A day as husband and wife brings 100 days of grace. What was your name again? Meower. Given that we were once husband and wife for a lifetime, let me go. I will give you anything you want. I don't want to die. This thing's temperament has never changed. It's lazy, weak, and foolish, incompetent in governing the country, yet quite inventive in bed, leaving me with a significant psychological scar. But I cannot kill him myself to vent my hatred. I raise my sword, pointing it at the dragon throne inside Taihe Hall. Whoever kills him first. I paused for a moment, shifting the tip of my sword 2 inches to land on the phoenix throne behind the dragon seat. That position will belong to them. In an instant, Shen Du drew his blade, Li Jujiao raised his firearm, and Yun Morsheng pulled out a dagger. The Emperor's death was undeniably gruesome. With all 3 weapons unleashed, a few drops of blood splattered on my face, and the faint metallic scent lingered at the tip of my nose. Quite pleasant, actually. Long live the Emperor. May you live 10,000 years. I glanced sideways, a subtle smile curling my lips. It was Shen Du who reacted first. He knelt on the ground, holding the sword with both hands, and kowtowed 3 times with great force. Following him, Li Jiuzhao also knelt down. Then Yun Morsheng and the soldiers around him. Finally, from the Taihe Hall to the Imperial Garden, and even throughout the entire palace, everyone knelt down and paid homage to our dynasty. Long live our Emperor. May he live 10,000 years. Long live our Emperor. 1,000 years and more. Long live the Emperor. May you live 10,000 years. In the midst of the cheers, I ascended the jade steps, overlooking the ministers below. The mandate of heaven. I am the mandate of heaven. In the 3rd year of his reign, the Liang dynasty reached its peak, with nations from all over the world coming to pay tribute. The envoys watched as even children in the capital played with fireworks, then quietly tucked away their own somewhat crude versions. Lost in thought, has the Liang dynasty already developed to such an extent? I smiled warmly and said, my dear ministers, there is no need to feel inferior. That compass is quite novel, and my Yun Gui Jun is very fond of it. Imperial consort Shen pinched my waist, whispering a gentle rebuke. Why haven't you saved anything for me? He and Yun Morsheng had been vying for my favor for 2 years, and I was long tired of it. Shen Du, after all, was my official husband, yet he had no sense of dignity, taking pleasure in suppressing the male consorts in the harem all day long. Yun Morsheng doesn't even need to be mentioned. As a civil official, he is naturally sharp-tongued, and being the head of the civil officials, he has long been steeped in that acidity. If you were to neglect him for just a few days, he could fill a book with his sour remarks. Li Jiuzhao is my favorite. He speaks little, works well, and doesn't vie for favor. When he's not busy, he forges iron in the Ministry of Works and researches new mechanisms, showing great initiative. I was pondering the day when I would also elevate him to the rank of noble consort when a sharp pain shot through me. The Emperor is in labor. In an instant, the delivery room was bustling with activity, all vying to claim the child's father. I am the Emperor's consort. The legitimate daughter will surely be registered under my name. On this day 10 months ago, the Emperor stayed in my palace. What a coincidence. 10 months ago, the Emperor favored me for 5 consecutive days. Only 5 days. The sound of a baby's cry came from the delivery room, and everyone was in a panic. Rushing over, the female imperial physician stepped out and said coldly, "It's a prince." The crowd sighed in disappointment. Only Yun Morsheng sat quietly to the side, unmoving like a mountain. The Emperor has always emphasized ability over gender in his teachings. Where have you all been learning? If you don't like this prince, give him to me. He hadn't finished speaking when another cry came from inside the room. The female imperial physician was extremely excited. Twins, it's a princess. Yun Morsheng was speechless. He overdid it. For over 30 years since my ascension, the country has enjoyed favorable weather and peace, with the people living in prosperity. Since contracting a cough during the winter, I have been keenly aware that my days are numbered. My youthful loves have all departed one by one due to illness and injury. My daughter is far away, and the only ones caring for me are my son and a few grandchildren on my deathbed. I vaguely recalled the absurd incident from years ago when the late Empress Dowager passed away, leading to the entombment of 8,000 young girls as her companions. I sighed in silence. The mandate of heaven should not be like this. Only then did I realize how familiar this voice sounded. It turned out that the powerful, aged voice by the river decades ago was my own. It shouldn't be like this, it should be like this. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. Given a second chance at life, I chose to avoid every encounter with the young general Mu Heng. When he attended my cousin's coming-of-age ceremony, I feigned illness and stayed in bed. When he won the lantern riddle contest for my cousin during the lantern festival, I stayed home alone, drinking and admiring the moon. When he decided to join the clan school, I decisively clung to the third princess and entered the palace as her study companion. I still remember my previous life, wasted and unfulfilled, with Mu Heng sighing by my bedside, lamenting that I had schemed at every turn to steal the marriage that should have been his and my cousin's. Even my only daughter accused me of being a hysterical madwoman, unlike her gentle and virtuous aunt. When the invitation to my cousin's coming-of-age ceremony arrived, my hands couldn't help but tremble. This thing clearly told me that it was heaven giving me a second chance. I dismissed the maids and submerged my body into the icy bathtub, refusing to come out even as I shivered uncontrollably from the cold. When the maid discovered me, she looked at me with an expression of disbelief. "Miss, the weather is so cold. Why must you torment your own body like this?" I only reminded her not to tell my parents about this. I waited until I developed a fever and the doctor confirmed that I was too ill to get out of bed, then used it as an excuse to avoid attending my cousin's coming-of-age ceremony. But isn't young Master Mu Heng also going to be there that day? Weren't you looking forward to it before? My mind involuntarily recalled Mu Heng's appearance, a handsome and elegant young man, the unspoken daydream of my girlhood. He was the young master of the Guardian General's manor, both cultured and martial, and had been appointed as a young general by the emperor at an early age. Our family had distant ties with his, so naturally, we wanted to send our daughter into his inner household. I was burning with fever, my whole body ached so much that I didn't want to speak, and after drinking the bitter medicine, my throat felt sour. Annoyed by the maid's nagging, I replied dismissively, "I don't want to go anymore. Why must there be so many questions? If you have the time to chatter here, why not fetch me another blanket? I'm terribly cold." The maid, having served me for many years, noticed my displeasure and realized she had spoken out of turn. She quickly added more charcoal to the brazier and brought an extra blanket. I watched her close the door and then closed my eyes, sinking into a deep sleep. In my previous life, I ended up marrying Mu Heng. It was also on the day of my cousin's coming-of-age ceremony that I was pushed into the water and nearly drowned, only to be saved by Mu Heng. With my clothes disheveled and being held by him, I inevitably lost my reputation because of it. The two families then set a wedding date and arranged for us to marry on an auspicious day. On our wedding day, he lifted my veil, stared at me for a long time, and then kept urging me to drink cup after cup until I was completely drunk. The next day, the purity cloth meant to symbolize my innocence showed no trace of blood. I was too ashamed to speak of it, and he never offered any explanation on my behalf. I was subjected to my mother-in-law's strict rules and became the laughingstock among the relatives, while he came home late and left early, acting as if he saw nothing. At that time, I had no idea what I had done to offend him. It wasn't until my cousin got married, and he, with reddened eyes and reeking of alcohol, pinned me down to consummate our marriage, that I finally realized there was someone else in his heart. Later, when I was pregnant and suffering from severe morning sickness, he always carried a sachet with him, a scent I had also noticed on my cousin. Mu Heng used an excuse to move into a separate room and never entered my courtyard again. When I gave birth to my daughter, I had a difficult labor. Upon learning it was a girl, he turned and left, and I was subjected to sarcastic remarks from the relatives around me. As my only daughter, I cherished her dearly and had long given up hope of having another child with Mu Heng. As I had expected, Mu Heng never shared a bed with me again. Under pressure from my mother-in-law, I began arranging concubines for him, and he favored these two concubines greatly, as both bore a resemblance to his cousin. As my daughter grew older and reached the age for marriage discussions, I selected a few suitable families for her to choose from, hoping she would have a better marriage than I did. Mu Heng deliberately sent me away to the temple to pray for blessings for half a year, during which time he married our daughter off to our cousin's son. By the time I found out, it was already a done deal, and my daughter was smiling as she offered me tea. I hysterically knocked over the teacup and angrily asked him why he insisted on marrying our daughter to our cousin's son. Was he using her to make up for his own regrets? My daughter resented me, her eyes red as she accused me of being overbearing, saying that her father's actions were all because I had driven him to it. Mother, do you know how miserable I have been? Since childhood, you always forced things I disliked upon me and pushed me to be the best. If it weren't for Brother Rong protecting me and my mother-in-law comforting me, I would have nearly given up on life several times. A woman who roars like a lion from Hadong. If I were a man, I would despise you too. How could I ever share a bed with you? In your entire life, you have borne no children besides me, and it is all your own doing. Father can only wait for me to have a son so that he can adopt a grandson to inherit the family business. My daughter looks down on me, my husband ignores me, and even my son-in-law deliberately avoids me. But what wrong have I actually done? I had no idea back then that the two of them were already in love. I resent Mu Heng for not being honest before the engagement, which led me to blindly enter the Mu family, bear the reputation of breaking up a loving couple, and endure the veiled criticisms from my mother-in-law and relatives who were unaware of the truth. I resent my daughter for not knowing that I went through a life-and-death struggle to give birth to her, and for not understanding the sleepless nights I spent taking care of her. I worked tirelessly to raise her as a noble lady, hoping to give her better prospects in marriage, only to be told in the end that I brought it upon myself. I hate even more that in the countless days and nights, the poems my husband recited were all filled with deep affection for his cousin, no one knows who. The beloved in my husband's words is, and I have become the victim of their unrequited torment. They want to make me, who knows nothing, bear the blame for a lifetime. Later on, I no longer wanted to endure it. Everyone says I am being unreasonable, hysterical like a shrew, saying I'm nothing like a proper general's wife, far less virtuous and magnanimous than my cousin, but I refuse to accept it. After a lifetime of toil and hardship, my appearance has become haggard and aged, nowhere near as lovely as my cousin's. I want a divorce, but Mu Heng firmly refused. He said his lifelong reputation couldn't be ruined because of me. In truth, he was afraid that if I left after the divorce, I would expose the truth and harm his cousin's reputation. He has always been protecting the one he loves, while I can only be imprisoned and trapped within these four walls. Until my daughter became pregnant, she was suffering from severe morning sickness and wanted to eat the pastries I made myself. I refused her request, no longer catering to her every whim as I used to. Seeing that I was truly unmoved, she flew into a rage and continued to curse at me, using the words I hated most to stab me in the heart over and over again. My heart ached terribly, and after collapsing in front of her, I met her resentful gaze. You'd be better off dead, so the family can have some peace. I even started to regret why I had given birth to her. I woke up from a nightmare, drenched in sweat, looking at my slender, fair hands and touching my still smooth face. I felt grateful to be alive once again after missing my coming-of-age ceremony. I peacefully studied at the clan school, automatically shutting out all news about Mu Heng from the outside world, but my maid brought me a message, saying that Mu Heng and the young lady would come to study at the clan school. In my previous life, I married early, and in the end, only Mu Heng and my cousin continued their studies. The newly hired teacher at the clan school is a great scholar of our time, an opportunity made possible only through my grandfather's friendship. With him I had just arrived at the clan school and noticed that my seat was already set with the 4 treasures of the study. However, it wasn't a book boy or a maid who had prepared them, it was Mu Heng himself grinding the ink. Miss, young Master Mu Heng is so thoughtful, he arranged everything for you. The maid's admiring tone drew a cold laugh from me. My 4 treasures of the study were still in the maid's bamboo basket. How could they possibly have been set up already? Sure enough, as I approached my seat, my cousin immediately rushed over, wearing an apologetic expression, and said to me, "Cousin, I wanted to be closer to the teacher. You don't mind, do you?" Of course I didn't mind. It wasn't that she wanted to be closer to the teacher, but rather that Mu Heng was sitting behind this spot. Without any intention of exposing her, I simply found a seat farther away from them and quietly waited for the maid to set up my things just as the teacher arrived and everyone bowed before taking their seats. There was a sudden ouch, my cousin's chair collapsed, and she fell flat on her back. All the classmates in the clan school burst into laughter. What ill intentions could children possibly have? It was just that my cousin's situation was too comical. Of course, 2 people didn't laugh, one was me. The other was Mu Heng. I don't like to laugh, it's too childish. After all, while Mu Heng was busy comforting his cousin, helping her up because he felt sorry for her after school, my cousin, her face streaked with tears, rushed over and stood in front of me, asking, "Cousin, do you dislike me? Did you do this on purpose?" I just forgot that the stool was broken. I don't usually move as much as she does, twisting around all the time as if she had a nail in her butt. There is a small problem. I forgot. Hearing my words, my cousin cried even more sadly, and Mu Heng immediately frowned at me. "How can you be like this, unable to stand others doing well?" The next sentence is almost going to say I have no upbringing. Unfortunately, I am not the person I was in my past life. I won't rush to explain or justify myself. Calmly, I replied with the words he often said to me in my past life, "If that's what you think, there's nothing I can do." He was left speechless by my words, and only after a long pause did he continue, "Yenyang's older brother is close to me, so naturally, I care for her by extension. Besides, she just started at the clan school, and her studies aren't as advanced as yours, which is why she sits closer to the teacher." Faced with my silence, he couldn't help but shake his head, as if he felt it was pointless to say more. "If you mind, I'll have her desk and chair replaced." Without expressing an opinion, I took my maid and left directly. Preparing to attend the 3rd princess's flower viewing banquet in my previous life, I was completely devoted to Mu Heng. I went to my aunt's house for a small birthday banquet just to secretly catch a glimpse of Mu Heng there. Now that Mu Heng is no longer everything to me, I naturally set my sights on broader horizons. The 3rd princess is someone who shares my interests, but back then I married Mu Heng early and faced many restrictions, gradually losing contact. While rummaging through the cabinet to prepare a gift for the 3rd princess, I came across the shoes I had personally made for Mu Heng. I thought about having the maid take them to the tailor shop to sell on the way to the banquet, as keeping them was truly an eyesore. After packing them into a bundle, I arrived at the 3rd princess's villa. Several noble ladies greeted me, and in the rush, the maid mistakenly took the wrong bundle. When I handed the bundle to the 3rd princess's maid, I had no idea that this mistake would lead the 3rd princess to misunderstand me. "How is that fair?" The banquet began, and the princess brought out the chrysanthemums called golden stamen, which had just been cultivated by the gardener and were in full bloom. Everyone praised them profusely and composed poems and verses in their honor. I casually picked up a brush and wrote one, merely to join in the fun, with no intention of standing out. Just then, the crown prince happened to arrive. He took a liking to my poem, offered some comments, and even revised a couple of words, saying I had exceptional talent. I silently accepted the prince's praise. I never had any ulterior thoughts about someone so high above me and didn't expect to have much interaction with him. As long as I could be friends with the 3rd princess, I could become her study companion and stay far away from Mu Heng and the others in the palace. I told the princess about my wish to become her study companion, and she happily agreed at once, even chiding me for not mentioning it earlier. Back at the residence, the maid said Mu Heng had sent me a gift. When I opened it, it was a string of pearl tassels. "Young Master Mu Heng sent a message. hoping to exchange this for your Shoshan stone inkstone. He hopes you will part with it. The Shoshan stone is brightly colored, and Mu Heng has always been a steady character. He isn't asking for it for himself. 9 times out of 10, it's his cousin who has taken a liking to it. Send it back, I won't exchange it. The next day, Mu Heng was already waiting for me at the entrance of the school, forcibly pulling me aside. I know you like me, but you can't let jealousy take over because of it. Yang cried all night yesterday. How could you bear to take away what someone else loves? I looked up, gazing at Mu Heng's youthful face before me. So he had always known about my feelings for him. That item belongs to me. If you want to force an exchange, who exactly is the one taking away what someone else loves? And there are some things you might have misunderstood. I don't like you, so don't ruin my reputation. My tone was indifferent as I looked directly into Mu Heng's eyes, making sure he understood that I wasn't speaking against my will. If you don't like me, why did you always have your maid send me things before? And why did you often find excuses to see me? Mu Heng didn't believe me, thinking I was using reverse psychology. Times have changed, and if I say I don't like it, then I don't like it. I'm not the only one with a Shoshan stone inkstone. You can easily go buy one elsewhere, but the one in your hand was made from a sketch I personally drew back then, which you then had the craftsman carve. My previously advancing footsteps halted as I suddenly remembered that detail from the past. Out of admiration, I picked up a discarded sketch from Mu Heng's desk and had a craftsman carve this inkstone using a newly purchased piece of Shoshan stone. Then I won't use it. I had the maid bring me a new inkstone, and then, in front of everyone, I smashed that Shoshan stone inkstone. Mu Heng's expression turned very unpleasant, and my cousin burst into tears, her eyes red. Cousin, how can you be so petty? This was Mu Heng's hard work. My things. When did they become Mu Heng's hard work? Since they have stirred up inappropriate thoughts in others, they should not exist. What I smashed was not just an inkstone, but my attitude toward others' covetousness. I would rather destroy it myself than leave it for someone else. When I entered the study hall, I noticed that my cousin's desk and chair had been replaced with a more expensive rosewood set, standing out conspicuously among the ordinary furniture. The pear wood is sturdy. Mu Heng is truly willing to put in the effort. I died with my eyes wide open, unable to rest in peace thinking this. I took my seat after paying respects to the teacher, but I felt unsteady and ended up falling to the ground, my tailbone hurting terribly. Ha ha ha. Does Sister Furu look like a clumsy turtle when she falls? The 8-year-old cousin who was close to Yang pointed at me and laughed, and it wasn't until the teacher tapped the ruler twice that everyone quieted down. I didn't cry or make a fuss. I just silently stood up, turned around to pick up the fragments of the table and chair, found the mortise and tenon joints, and clearly saw the saw marks. I handed the items to the teacher and explained my thoughts. Soon, some people in the classroom stopped laughing. My cousin, who had been mocking me, admitted that he was the one who tampered with them, claiming it was just a simple prank. I knew it wasn't that simple, but since he insisted it was his fault, the teacher wouldn't investigate further. After school, Mu Heng stopped me to apologize on behalf of his cousin. Yang is still young and doesn't know any better. I've already scolded her, and I will send a formal apology to your residence. We're not even a family yet. And he's already lowering himself for his cousin. He must be afraid that once I find out it was his cousin's doing, I'll retaliate, so he's trying to get ahead of it. My cousin has already apologized, and he didn't even mention his cousin. There's no need to send me any formal apology. I got into the sedan chair without looking back, completely indifferent to Mu Heng's attitude. In the evening, the apology gifts were still delivered, and my mother even asked me privately about the reason. Seeing a small bruise on my body, likely caused by a fragment from the chair, she couldn't help but advise me not to make enemies in the clan school. I nodded silently, thinking to myself that I had no desire to continue studying in the clan school. On the day of rest, the Crown Prince suddenly came to our home. After meeting with my father alone, I was called to the front hall. Your Highness, I entrust my daughter to you. My father was respectful and deferential to the Crown Prince, while I, having just arrived and unaware of the reason, could only quickly bow in greeting. As I lowered my head, I noticed the pattern on the Crown Prince's shoes. It was clearly the one I had embroidered, the shoes that were originally intended to be sent to the tailor shop. How did they end up on the Crown Prince's feet? Suppressing the fear in my heart, I watched as the Crown Prince had the carriage prepared, and we sat inside one after the other. Your craftsmanship is quite good. I am very pleased with it. Perhaps the atmosphere in the carriage was too stifling, so the Crown Prince was the first to break the silence. My heart was in my throat, and I suppressed my panic, feeling my ears burn. I'm glad Your Highness likes it. These shoes weren't meant for the Crown Prince at all, yet they fit him perfectly in the carriage. There was another long silence as I was taken to the palace school. To become the princess's study companion, I had to take an exam. The Crown Prince told me to relax, and once I was out of his sight, I felt much more at ease with the knowledge of 2 lifetimes. I breezed through the entrance exam. However, I grew nervous again when facing the Crown Prince. He stood beneath the wintersweet tree, his tall figure accentuated by a deep blue robe. Third sister is waiting for us. Let's go. The Crown Prince walked ahead, and I followed behind. When we met the third princess, she smiled teasingly and said, "You said you were bringing me a gift," but when I opened the bundle, it was all men's items. I had to think about it for quite a while. In the bundle, besides that pair of shoes, there were also small items like pouches and sachets that I originally intended to give to Mu-hung. They weren't valuable things, but they were all my hard work, and it would be a shame to throw them away, so I thought of selling them now that they've ended up in the Crown Prince's hands. I want to explain but fear displeasing such a noble person. My silence became evidence of my shyness, and the princess temporarily stopped teasing me. After dinner, I returned home and, passing by my father's study, thought I'd say hello. Originally, I planned for her to fall into the water at her coming-of-age banquet to create a connection with Mu-hung and secure the marriage. But now, it seems His Highness has taken an interest in her, and for the moment, I'm unsure how to decide. Marrying into the Mu family, given our family background, she would undoubtedly be the principal wife, but if she were to follow the Crown Prince, she might only become a concubine. Moreover, in the future, His Highness will surely bring more new women into the palace. With our daughter's temperament, I fear she would suffer. My father's words took me by surprise, while my mother's words broke my heart. It turns out that the drowning incident in my past life was orchestrated by my own parents. Parents who love their children plan for their future. For the sake of the family and my happiness, they resorted to scheming to force Mu-hung into marrying me. So, this is why Mu-hung accused me of being cunning and manipulative in my past life. Besides, we both know how our daughter feels about Mu-hung. If we were to truly make her marry His Highness, she would never agree. Hearing this, I pushed the door open and walked in. My parents were startled by my sudden appearance, but I knelt down directly before them. Mother cares for me, and father plans for my future. I am deeply moved by your love, but I no longer have feelings for Mu-hung. His heart belongs to another. He has fallen for our cousin. I told my father what I knew, but kept the matter of my rebirth to myself. My father sighed and, along with my mother, respected my decision. The Zhengguo generals' household is indeed a prestigious family, but if husband and wife cannot confide in each other, they can only become a resentful couple in the blink of an eye. It was the spring festival. After New Year's Day, it was time for everyone to visit relatives and exchange New Year's greetings. Naturally, I went with my mother to my cousin's house. I had deliberately inquired beforehand. Mu-hung had already visited yesterday, so I shouldn't have run into him today, but in my cousin's garden, I still encountered Mu-hung. Long time no see. You seem to have lost quite a bit of weight. Mu-hung took the initiative to show goodwill, but he also noticed that I was deliberately avoiding him. Unlike before when I would often appear, I've just grown taller. Don't misunderstand, young general. I lifted my foot to leave, but Mu-hung blocked my path. You used to call me Brother Mu-hung before. Why are you so distant now? His eyes were fixed on me, making me very uncomfortable. It was the same look he had when he was drunk and intimate with me before. A chill ran down my spine, and I hated the way he looked at me. Things were different back then. I didn't know you had feelings for my cousin. Now that I see clearly, of course, I have to keep my distance. he took a step closer, and I took a step back, maintaining a certain distance. Who said I like Yang Yang? I just take extra care of her because of her brother. But if we're talking about feelings, you and I are the perfect match. Is this a confession? I think it's the resentment of a change in attitude toward me after weighing the options. I am no longer a lovesick maiden, and I can see through his insincerity. Young general, please don't joke. My cousin has feelings for you too. She would be heartbroken if she knew you said that. Mu Heng quickened his pace and drew closer to me. And what about you? Would hearing me say this make you a little happier? And stop avoiding me? His approach flustered me. I was afraid of being seen alone with him here, which could lead to gossip. As I quickened my steps, I slipped and could only watch helplessly as I fell into the water. Mu Heng wanted to jump down to save me, remembering how in my previous life, after getting wet, he held me and I had no choice but to marry him. I immediately pulled out the golden hairpin from my hair and pressed it against my neck. Don't come any closer. If you truly want to save me, go call my maid over. Mu Heng froze completely, his eyes even showing a hint of sadness after he turned and left. I lay on the stone by the water, waiting for my maid to pull me up. The pond at my aunt's house wasn't deep. In my previous life, I was too panicked to remember to stand up. But now I won't repeat the same mistake. The maid brought me a rope, and I held on tightly as 2 or 3 people quickly pulled me up. My mother was so anxious that her eyes turned red. She immediately sent me to the warm pavilion to soak in hot water and changed me into dry clothes. Fortunately, Mu Heng, knowing I was avoiding suspicion, did not appear by the pond, so my falling into the water wasn't used against me. I fell ill again and spent the Lantern Festival cooped up at home. Mu Heng and my cousin took turns sending invitations for me to go out, but I declined. I remember in my previous life, while I was still at home waiting to be married, I heard that Mu Heng was going to participate in a lantern riddle contest, and the prize was a pair of red agate earrings. Perfect for a bride to wear. I secretly followed behind and watched as Mu Heng gave the answers to my cousin, allowing her to claim the prize afterward. My cousin boasted to me, "It's so great to have Mu Heng around. Whatever I want, he can get it for me." At that time, I was slow to realize and couldn't detect the underlying metaphor, but now I shudder all over. Just a pair of agate earrings, nothing particularly valuable. I didn't care about them back then, and I don't cherish them now. I asked the maid to warm a pot of wine. Gazing at the bright moonlight outside the window, I gradually felt warmth spreading through me in the solitude. The next day, the maid came in and told me that Mu Heng had sent something over last night. Since I had fallen asleep early after getting drunk, I hadn't opened it yet. For a moment, I was puzzled, only to discover a small brocade box inside, containing the agate earrings I had desired but failed to obtain in my previous life. Send it back, I don't need it. After returning the item, I didn't give it much thought because the date for me to enter the palace as the third princess's study companion had been finalized. I would be entering the palace tomorrow. I had the maid prepare some gifts and personally delivered them to the tutor who had just returned for the new year. He gave me some advice on what to pay attention to after entering the palace. Stepping outside, light snow began to fall again. Mu Heng, wearing a silver fox cloak, stood waiting for me in the courtyard. "Did you withdraw from the clan school just to avoid me?" I shook my head. Being chosen by the princess to serve as a companion in the palace is an honor for me. It will naturally benefit me when it comes to marriage discussions in the future. When did you become so calculating? You used to be completely devoted to me, and now you're thinking of marrying someone else. Mu Heng seemed rather embarrassed and angry, his eyes red as he stared straight at me. "You and your cousin are the perfect match. I don't like meddling in other people's relationships. Since you've always been so protective of your cousin, let's not give anyone the wrong impression about us. My feelings for you are not a misunderstanding. If you care about me, I can cut ties with my cousin." As Mu Heng's words fell, his cousin was already standing behind him with reddened eyes, tears falling like broken strings of pearls. "Cousin Mu Heng, didn't you say you would cherish me for a lifetime? Now, for the sake of my cousin, where does that leave me?" I watched as my cousin walked up to Mu Heng, grabbing his clothes and demanding an explanation. Mu Heng chose to remain silent, just as he had in our previous life. using cold indifference to drive me to hysteria. The grievances I have nowhere to vent are slowly eating away at the rationality within me. When I desperately needed an outlet, Mu Heng responded with silence and avoidance. My cousin, not getting an answer, was so overwhelmed with anxiety that she fainted on the spot. Mu Heng panicked and quickly picked her up from the snow. She's not in a good state. I need to take her to see a doctor first. I didn't bother to watch Mu Heng's hurried figure disappear. They lived in the west of the city. While I was heading to the palace in the east, we were no longer going in the same direction. Life in the palace was lived with caution, as I feared that a single misstep might bring trouble. Fortunately, under the princess's protection, I managed to live quite comfortably within my courtyard compared to my previous life. When Mu Heng kept me confined at home, I now had many friends. We composed poetry, enjoyed drinks, and studied together with the princess. My days were full and vibrant. It wasn't until the princess told me that the crown prince was going to select a consort and that I should prepare myself. I don't expect to have any interaction with the crown prince. It's just that as the princess's study companion, I have more opportunities to see him since the mix-up with the package last time. When the crown prince received my embroidery, I haven't deliberately given him anything again. Given my family background, I can only be the crown prince's consort, but if I were to marry, I would want to be the principal wife. So, for now, I don't wish to compete for the position. The third princess was quite surprised by my answer. She thought that the crown prince and I were already a natural match, just waiting for the right moment. I want to take the female official examination. If I can pass, I will be able to realize my ambitions. I remember that in my previous life, in just half a year, border conflicts will break out. Mu Heng will follow his father to lead the troops into battle, and the crown prince will also face internal and external troubles due to the floods in Jiangnan. Have you thought it through? If you participate in the female official examination, you will miss the crown princess selection. As I nodded, I followed the princess's gaze and realized that the crown prince was standing behind me at some point, startling me so much that I instinctively jumped. I am not a tiger. Why are you so nervous? Afraid I might eat you? The crown prince sent the third princess away and sat in the garden pavilion. I stood there silently, fearing he would blame me for my earlier words. Your Highness is not a tiger, but a future wise ruler, so naturally you would not eat me. I pretended to remain calm, but as soon as I finished speaking, the crown prince added another remark. No, I want to devour you. I was momentarily stunned, and when I looked up, I happened to meet the prince's deep gaze. Just joking with you. Look how surprised you are. The prince's smile was radiant, his slender fingers holding a booklet that I had left at the princess's place a few days ago. Did you write this? I nodded. It was my policy paper on the flooding in Jiangnan. Though it still needed refinement, the crown prince handed the booklet back to me and gently patted my shoulder. Do whatever you wish to do. I will be your support. I looked up at the crown prince's handsome features. As he stood up, he seemed like a great tree, shielding me from the glaring sunlight. A halo of light radiated from behind him. On the day the crown prince was selecting his consort, I stepped into the inner hall for the female official examination, picked up my brush, and wrote a well-prepared treatise on flood control, securing the top spot in one fell swoop. The emperor personally appointed me as a female official, granting me the privilege to move freely within the palace from then on. Mu Heng requested to see me alone, sending 3 invitations in a row. Knowing full well that he was about to depart for the borderlands, I had no choice but to agree to the meeting. I never imagined that the girl who used to follow me around would now become a female official. However, as a woman, there are many restrictions. It would be more practical to marry and focus on raising a family. Mu Heng's gaze was intense, but his words were deliberately meant to put me down. Men aspire to achieve great things, and women can naturally hold up half the sky. The founding empress established female officials precisely because she hoped women could also serve the country with loyalty. How can you look down on female officials? That's not what I meant. I just wanted to tell you that I'm going to the border. Before I leave, my mother hopes I'll take a wife, and the one I've always envisioned. As my wife is you. I let out a cold laugh. Mu Heng still hadn't given up on me. But my husband could never be you in this lifetime. Mu Heng seemed struck, and I caught the way his hands clenched into fists within his sleeves. His confusion stemmed from my sudden clarity. Recalling the life I had wasted on him in my previous existence, I couldn't be bothered to answer. Even female officials must leave the palace to marry by the age of 25. If I can return safely this time, I hope you will give me a chance. In life, one should not be confined to trivial affections. Since you and I are not meant to be, it's better to part ways and forget each other. Your repeated attempts to find me are nothing more than unwillingness to let go. Back then, as a young girl with budding feelings, I developed admiration for you. And my cousin also harbored affection for you. Wandering between two women, did you secretly feel proud? I watched his expression gradually darken as he tried to explain himself to me. There's no need to say more. The way you are now disappoints me. This is the last time. I turned and left, and soon after, I heard that Mu Heng had married my cousin. When I returned home on my day off, my mother told me about it, and I couldn't help but sigh. It turned out that after Mu Heng saw me that day, he got heavily drunk. My cousin took advantage of his unconscious state, deliberately undressed, and lay beside him. When they were found in a state of disarray, the marriage was hastily arranged, since the imperial decree for the expedition had already been issued. The wedding was exceptionally simple. A bridal sedan chair carried her into the Mu residence, and Mu Heng left the city with the army shortly after. 3 years later, I was already 20 years old. The crown prince had selected several consorts but had yet to decide on a primary consort. The princess told me that His Highness the Crown Prince was waiting for me, but I just smiled and shook my head. Rather than obsessing over a man's love, it is better to hold power firmly in my hands. I combined the strategies in my hands with the foresight of major events from my past life, repeatedly helping the Crown Prince resolve troubles and even earning favor in front of the Emperor. Through my efforts, the position of female official is no longer just a figurehead. I can finally stand in the court just like my father. However, I am still in the outer hall, far from the pinnacle of power. Mu Heng returned victorious at this time, his armor gleaming with a cold light, frowning deeply at the sight of me in official robes. A hen crowing at dawn is an ill omen. How dare you presume to take your place in the court? I and Mu Heng were at odds with each other, clashing time and again in the imperial court, as if we had become mortal enemies. At the age of 25, I was approaching the time of my retirement, and I couldn't help but feel anxious. Mu Heng became even more opposed to my political views in the court, and the emperor's health took a turn for the worse. Logically, the crown prince should have been overseeing state affairs, but the emperor instead assigned the fifth prince to assist in governance. I sensed a whiff of conspiracy and went to seek the counsel of the third princess and the crown prince, but as soon as I left the house, someone stopped the carriage. My cousin stood in front of it, demanding to see me. It had been years since we last met, and she looked much more haggard. Despite being only in her 20s, she already had strands of white hair at her temples. Mu Heng is planning a rebellion. You must prepare yourselves. I feigned surprise. Could my cousin's directness be a test from Mu Heng? I glared sharply, wanting to see if my cousin would panic, but her expression remained exceptionally resolute. Mu Heng loves you. He has kept me confined in the mansion all this time. I came out this time hoping you could help me get a divorce. How did you manage to get out? I've endured all these years with him, and every time we were intimate, he called out your name. I hate you, and I hate him even more. As long as you can help me get a divorce, I'm willing to do anything. I didn't express my stance immediately, but had her quietly sent away. Soon, Mu Heng began searching everywhere for his cousin's whereabouts, even coming to my residence. Yang came, but she left, asking me to get a divorce agreement from you. I told him the truth, observing Mu Heng's calm expression. I do intend to support the fifth prince, but as long as you are willing to resign from your official position, marry, and no longer involve yourself in court affairs, I will remain loyal to His Highness. So, all these years of competing with me in court were simply because you couldn't stand seeing me as an official. In Mu Heng's heart, he fundamentally looks down upon women. He only wishes for us to be like dodder vines, dependent and delicate. This world belongs to men. What you should be doing is managing the inner household. supporting your husband, raising children, and continuing the family line. I didn't want to deal with him, but Mu Heng suddenly attacked and knocked me unconscious. I was awakened by a pungent medicinal smell. By then, Mu Heng was already fighting with the hidden guards sent by the Crown Prince to protect me, while my maid shielded me to the side in my own residence. Mu Heng actually tried to tarnish my innocence. It was truly outrageous. Mu Heng looked at me with resentment, but I handed him over to the Crown Prince. Soon after, Mu Heng's attempt at rebellion was completely crushed. I am a person who has been reborn, assisting the Crown Prince to prevent problems before they arise, already having everything under control. No matter how much unwillingness Mu Heng had, in the end, he could only watch helplessly as I helped the Crown Prince ascend to the throne and receive the homage of all the officials. At the age of 25, I became the female prime minister personally appointed by the emperor, while Mu Heng, due to his family's immunity token, was confined to his home. The four-walled courtyard that trapped me in my previous life should now let Mu Heng taste its bitterness. My cousin came to me asking for a divorce letter, but I advised her to learn to be gentle and virtuous. The imperial decree stated that she and Mu Heng were a match made in heaven, so they could not divorce. In the dilapidated Zhonghua general's mansion, my cousin's hysterical cries could often be heard, and Mu Heng would always lose his temper and beat her black and blue. I still remember in my past life, my cousin once came to me to boast that even though I became the general's wife, I couldn't keep my husband. Now, even if she wants to leave Mu Heng, it's impossible. Mu Heng hated me, and even more resented my cousin for informing on him. On a snowy morning, they stabbed each other. Blood stained the courtyard red. My cousin laughed until she was hoarse, and then, like Mu Heng, she died with her eyes wide open. The emperor handed over the memorial and silently sat beside me, resting his chin on one hand, quietly watching me. Feeling uncomfortable under his gaze, I asked, "How long does your majesty plan to stare at me? Now that the position of empress is vacant, I will wait until you are willing to marry me." I sorted the memorials into categories, quietly ground the cinnabar to a rich consistency, and handed the imperial brush to his majesty. "Now is not the time for matters of the heart. Your majesty should focus on diligent governance." Another 5 years passed in the blink of an eye, and the third princess's children had already turned 10. On the second day after I resigned as prime minister, she knocked on my door and dragged me out of bed. "Others may not know your thoughts, but I do. Back then, you fell into icy water and damaged your body, making it difficult to conceive. You turned a blind eye to my brother's love, delaying and waiting until he shifted his affections elsewhere. Now open your eyes and see, the kingdom is peaceful and prosperous, yet my brother has remained chaste for you, without a single heir. If you had any conscience at all, you shouldn't be sleeping so soundly." After working hard for over a decade, I finally managed to take a break, but the third princess shook me awake relentlessly. "Fu Ru, my brother has given you the opportunity to realize your ambitions. Isn't it time to settle down now?" The third princess forced me to drink a lot of wine. Dizzy and disoriented, I entered the palace carrying a bundle in my hand. In the imperial study, the chief eunuch hurriedly announced my late-night arrival. The emperor was once again dressed in that same indigo dragon robe from years ago. I staggered through the door, grabbed the emperor's arm, and said, "Come with me, I'm not drunk." The emperor opened his mouth to speak, but I covered it with my hand and said, "Don't say a word. I know what you're thinking just by the look in your eyes." After more than a decade together, I no longer felt the nervousness I had when we first met. I pushed the emperor down to sit and handed him the bundle. "Change into this. I made it myself." The emperor unwrapped the bundle, revealing a complete set of sleepwear. His eyes held a hint of pleasant surprise. After all, it had been 10 years since I last made anything for him. The moment he changed into the clothes, I narrowed my eyes slightly and began leading him step by step toward the bed. "Rua, do you know what you're doing?" I didn't speak, just wrapped my index finger around the belt he had just fastened, roughly exposing his upper body, then pressed him down onto the dragon bed. "I am not drunk, of course I know what I am doing." Tonight, my form of address changed from subject to consort, and the emperor's eyes darkened as he actively responded to my affectionate kiss. Amidst the lingering fragrance of the night, His Majesty and I engaged in a deeper level of communication. The next morning at the court assembly, His Majesty was full of energy, while I remained in the rear palace, aching all over. There were no obstacles to me becoming the Empress, and our children were born one after another. After 2 sons, when I finally gave birth to a daughter, His Majesty no longer allowed me to have more children. Recalling my past life, I silently tightened my grip on His Majesty's hand. I intended to live a carefree life without marriage or children, but someone became my bright moon. Why, what nonsense are you spouting? After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.